Okay, friends, hi, and I hope you're hearing me fairly well. My voice is a little rough today. We've been doing different things, but we're at that point that happens now about every 2 weeks, where we take up this type of program which deviates from the normal studies. And I began to look at our last program 6 of series 6, and I decided to kind of enrich it, or, or maybe make it less comprehensible. I don't know. I hope not. So this will be number 7 of series number 6, which we kind of began a few months ago, even though occasionally a mistaken nomenclature pops up and it seems to be series 5, but it isn't. So we need, even though it's often done with the concrete mind, it can also be done with the abstract mind. We need to define our terms. And, there will be some very searching questions that we will be, I'll be asking myself, and I'll be asking you, whether any of it rings a bell as the great science of impression kind of takes over and impacts the magnetic aura that you have created, which tends to attract such impressions. We are really both receivers and senders, or distributors. And the better we can receive from those who are trying to help us, whether a group or an individual, a group or a master or some agent, the better type of distributor we will become, even if it's a very humble course of action, such as helping mentor a few students and sharing with them some elevating thoughts as a service. And that is really, in a way, one of the bottom steps of the ladder of ascending entities, ascending points of tension. I never realized when I got into the arcane school 49 years ago. I remember kind of filling out that application a long time, and I thought I was going in to learn, because I had such an academic orientation. I said, well, what an opportunity for learning, maybe learning more about the Tibetan's books, with which I had become a little familiar. But little did I know that I was also entering a very strong demand for meditation and a very great opportunity, however relatively humble, to serve my fellow human beings. The studies were what was foremostly in my mind, but gradually you learn that there must be a balanced life between meditation, study, and service. And maybe now I find myself much more confirming of that balanced life, and actually tending to live it more successfully than would have been possible in the beginning. Now, what I did, I thought there were so many interesting questions that were coming up as we ponder this very abstruse subject, that I went over what we did last time, and in a way I deepened it. Now, this is not to say that there is a way to resolve all the difficult issues. I think there is not a way to resolve them just like so. So, and I do, of course, I do want to say hi to you, and I'm grateful for Michael Crow for standing by and helping to keep me on the tracks. And sometimes Joe and or BL or Michael Stacy and lately Frederick, sometimes they show up, and it's a way of being guided through the technical through the technical maze, which I always find myself reconsidering, because for me it's never like second nature. But just like to welcome Anne Veronica. I think you have some kind of a Skype into me, Anne Veronica, and I'll try to get to it when I can, okay? And Anne Parker, that is, and Annette from New Zealand, and Catherine from Australia, and Catherine from it might be easier to have the list of countries from which everyone hails rather than keep guessing. So anyway, Catherine is here, and welcome. And let's see if I can get this to behave a little bit, so we know kind of whom we're dealing with. Vivian, Tuya's here too, and Tia and Risto. welcoming you all, and I just want to make sure that I include everyone. Francois, welcome, and Frederick, who has been assisting us with his considerable technical knowledge, among other things, and Georgina, welcome, Georgina, and let's see, Heike from Germany, welcome, and Jan Oliveira, I think from the western part of the United States, but I could be corrected. And Joan Schofield, welcome, and Martine Dupont. It's somehow connected with, I suppose, France or Canada. Welcome, Martine, and Mayra Santos as our guest. Welcome, Mayra, and Nesa. Yes, hi, Nesa. And as I said, Risto from Finland. Maybe the number of people from Finland is sometimes lesser. And then Tia, yes, here so frequently, and our gratitude for that. Vivian and Yvonne Weniger, again, another person that is here a great deal. Well, friends, I want to say there's probably no way to have the build-up of the necessary sensitivity, the necessary magnetic aura upon which higher impression can play, except to be really consistent in these particular studies and in meditation. DK assures us that all of this will come along if we are guardians of the inner process. Okay. Now, it's not like these demanding thoughts can be understood in a week or two, or even some number of lifetimes. So I will use my usual method of a semi-lecture and semi-meditation as we try to ascertain some important factors that have to do with what for most of us, and it was also so for me before I really started putting on my thinking cap, we begin to work with a different language altogether. Now, DK, at various points in the teaching on telepathy, said, well, there's just no true language evolved yet whereby I can speak of these matters. So let's, yeah. Now we are kind of dealing with the poles, polar opposites, infinitesimals, and absolute infinitude, poles apart, but still having some similarities. So what to you, as I begin to ask you these questions to reflect upon, what to you is an infinitesimal? The question of whether there are many or only one can be taken up as we go along. What is an infinitesimal? And I'm hoping that you can hear me and see what I'm trying to do. Now, there are probably many ways to answer that question. I have some colloquial ways of answering it. Let's just call it a mobile, what can I call it? A mobile non-quantity, which a mobile non-quantity, which is ever and forever oh, forever beginningless and next to nothing. As near nothingness as possible. A non-quantity, because the minute we try to make an infinitesimal definite instead of indefinite, we lose the principal quality of the infinitesimal. the fact that it is a perpetual, ever lessening. And with that, my keyboard fell off my lap. Maybe that's an indication. Let's call it a perpetual. Whoop. That's not what I want. And hopefully I did not lose myself.
You can
Let's
just
see
click
where
cancel.
I am here. What is it, Mike?
You can just click cancel. You'll go back. Bottom right.
Oh, I'm trying. But I don't quite know what to cancel.
It's a button on the bottom. It says
It's
cancel
a
next
Z,
to save.
Control Z, right?
No, that's
So let's,
undo. Just cancel this window because we're in the save window right now.
I wonder if you can get on with me, and I hate for that to happen, this kind of thing, but I don't even know where the cancel may be. I'm kind of looking for it, and I'll approve that you come on. Okay. Okay. Now we seem to be back to normal.
Yeah.
You know, when these things fall, that has been, okay, my bane, perpetual, ever lessening. Never reaching zero. And I hope that that you are seeing this, what I'm doing. Okay.
Yes.
So I call it sometimes as a joke, I call it next to nothing. An infinitesimal is ever next to nothing, as close to nothing as one can get without disappearing entirely. Well, let's see how that all works out. I'll lift this up, and I'll just joke about it here. It is next to nothing, and ever so, perpetually and ever so. Now, the way you get it, of course, is you divide any quality, or rather quantity, any quantity whatsoever, by absolute infinitude. Or, you know, the old way of doing it was 1 over infinity, or a Google over infinity, or a Googleplex over infinity. Those are just huge numbers. But over absolute infinity, you're still going to get the infinitesimal. But that's the simple way of looking at it. There is a whole micro realm which is ever more micro. And eventually, however, whether I'm talking about absolute infinitesimal, the ultimate infinitesimal, which is more a process than a quantity, or whether I'm talking about the absolute infinitude, which again is more of a process than a quantity, they cyclically all disappear. Now that's a strange idea maybe, but you are left with no thingness. The no thingness of the one than which there is no other, which is absoluteness itself. Now, I almost said Master Blavatsky. Well, now it's probably true. At least that's what Madame Roerich tells us, that she has made her way to the central stronghold, and that she is, in fact, now a master of the wisdom. Well, she was always hinting at this when she was an arhat, an initiate of the fourth degree, where at which time the monad becomes of real dawning significance. Now, there's all kinds of things that can interest us, and they're maybe a little closer to earth. But what, my friends, will make abstract thinkers of us able to deal with that which is truly abstruse? How shall we become abstract thinkers and apply this to the true ideas we receive from higher aspects of the spiritual triad, and even from the realms of the monad itself? Now, maybe when we think about that, we don't really want to become abstract thinkers. We just want the facts, as a great teacher like Master DK would offer us. But the fact is that he is a tremendous abstract thinker with a very sensitive aura or area which has been impressed by higher ideas for centuries now. That's how he got to be the way he is. What do you want to be? What do I want to be? How do you want to demonstrate in your life? Anyway, now another question for us, maybe we remember it. Is there one infinitesimal, or are there many? If there seem to be many, are those many really one? Well, we could say, okay, we have infinitesimals of different quantities. But the point is that when you divide any quantity by the articulations in absolute infinitude, you always are going to get a slippery kind of ever lessening, which will always, regardless of the quantity, what's it called? Is it called the divisor? There's divisor, quotient, and anyway, it's the figure on top, like 1 over infinity. So when you divide that quantity, 1 or whatever, by absolute infinity, you always get the same slippery, non-definite, indefinite, ever-lessening quantity. In my view, anyway, it's always the same. So obviously I'm suggesting that there is one infinitesimal, and I'll say, and it is the absolute infinitesimal, existing in the supra universal state. Now, it's obvious, isn't it, that a new type of terminology is being coined here. And you may say, well, okay, why bother with all this? But the end of it is better meditation, deeper study, and more effective service. At least I think so. So I'm saying there is one type of ultimate infinitesimal, and it occurs by dividing any quantity whatsoever by the absolutely infinite articulations of absolute infinitude. And everything that I'm talking about, of course, is not the ultimate absoluteness. It is, and yet it isn't. There are times in timelessness when the absoluteness is simply all in all, without any competition, if I can use such a strange word. There's no absolute deity. There's no reflection of that deity as complete homogeneity or infinitely articulated absolute infinitude. There's no universe. There are no points. There's just no thing. And that's been going on forever. Now, you might say, well, what has that got to do with me? Well, it would be a mistaken identity to consider that kind of me as if you were somehow different from this tremendous absoluteness. I get my yeah. That's all a funny thing. It's it's all about learning to be more muscular and more robust and look more like a weightlifter or something. And it said, abs don't lie. Well, of course they lie. The abs they're talking about have to do pretty much with stomach muscles, which is really, in a way, the lowest kind of material demonstration. But when I see ABS, I tend to think of it as the absolute and not about stomach muscles. Although I think we go through, there it is, ABS, absolute infinitude, or absolute, the absolute rather. I can't even call it infinitude. It's not right to call it infinitude because that implies articulation. Like in music, an articulated passage is one that goes boom, 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 boom. Everything is separated from everything else. But if a legato passage means everything is tied to everything else and not separated. My colleague in music, Harold Moses, used to joke about we were experiencing legato nights where the day and the night just kind of went into each other without any kind of separation. We kind of saw a living example of that when we went to the studio one fine morning, and here's a man wandering around in his bathrobe. He had been there all night, doing legato nights, I guess. He was in a peculiar state of mind of someone that has worked all night and then continued to work during the day. Okay. Well, just some amusing things come up. And I have another name for some important factors. Perhaps we can call the infinitesimal, or let's call it the ultimate infinitesimal. We can call it by a name that I've always liked, and I think I made it up. Maybe that's why I like it. It's called the ultimate negligibility, which is like, next to nothing. It's as negligible as it can be without being nothing. Think about that while I'm writing it down. As negligible as it can be without being nothing. But of course, this area is filled with paradoxes. If you can't stand, they say, if you if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. But if you can't stand paradox, then this is not the subject to which you should be attending at this time. Eventually, I think everyone will attend to this or some similar subject. The whole thing about it is we are being, and we want to be what we are. We want to be being. Now that kind of wipes things away. I'm looking at hundreds of objects around me, and I'm not, at this point, too interested in their form or function. I'm interested in the fact that every one of them is being. Now, sometimes there are certain images that help you get into being. We're pushing it. We're pushing the extremes. Maybe that gives us more appreciation when we get back into the realm of the clearly defined. Every once in a while, maybe for you too, I have an attack of being. Something comes upon me, and I just sort of skim being off the presence of quantity and quality. I think I'll write that down. How to skim being off the presence of quantity and quality. Now, obviously, in normal occultism, quantity and quality are of the utmost importance. You can't manage in the Maha Mayavic finite world, the finite universe, and I'm saying all universes are finite, without a healthy respect for quantity and quality. Just imagine trying to go to Mars or the moon without really being an expert in those areas. Just imagine trying to deal with your own etheric anatomy and in general personal anatomy without having a very good handle on what quality really is. That's why I say it's paradoxical. These necessary areas are not necessarily real or lastingly real, but they are necessary. So some of this will be a little repetition. You're thinking along with me, I assume. How is an infinitesimal derived? And as I've said before, by dividing any quantity by absolute infinitude, or the articulations of absolute infinitude. Now, some of these things are so abstract that people might rightly wonder, how can you deal with this stuff? Is it even justifiable to deal with it? The greatest definite being in cosmos and in super, or in universe, or super universally, well, did I forget what I was going to say? They give an opportunity for the heart to be activated in a new way. And they make us sensitive enough, if we're dealing with these extremes, that suddenly the meaning or experience of pure being is coming our way. And I asked this before, but if I repeat, you'll have to forgive me, because I certainly need the repetition, and maybe it's helpful to you too, if you care at all to engage in this kind of study / experience. So what I'll say is, it's a question, is an infinitesimal a movable or a definite quantity? Now, by now you should know that it is an indefinite, slippery, movable, apparent quantity, which will never remain the same in the face of other definite factors that have quantity. Quantity has to do, I think, with the number of perceptions in which the great perceiver engages. And as I say, when looking at the infinitesimal, you might have to determine, is it a quantity at all? It's kind of a state of relative ersatz, which means substitute, a state of relative ersatz quantity. It seems to be a quantity, but it will forever change its position in relation to any other definite quantity. And then, as I said before, but let's see if it sinks into any degree. Let us examine here and say that the ultimate infinitesimal is a slippery non-quantity, or a slippery, ever indefinite quantity, which tends to perpetual, ever lessening when compared to definite quantities. Now, if I say, look, the conclusion of all this is the experience of oneness. No, then you'd ask, why do we have to go through all this to experience oneness? Are there not many ways to do so? And I would have to say, yes, there are. But to arrive at this heart state which reveals oneness is a great objective. Okay. Well, obviously, these are great questions upon which to ponder when you find your abstract mind all oiled up and ready to go. Sometimes, I get stuck. I can go no further. And maybe you'll find the same, but eventually there will be a breakthrough. What is the difference, I ask, if there is one, between an ultimate infinitesimal, and remember I'm saying there's only one ultimate infinitesimal, and a dimensionless point, or a true point. Now, this is a question to drive one a little bit mad, I must say. But there are differences between the infinitesimal and the absolute infinity on one side of the consideration, and the dimensionless point, or true point, on the other. And maybe not knowing entirely whether this is correct, the the ultimate infinitesimal and the absolute infinitude have content. Oop. Why am I getting... I must be displaced on the keyboard. The ultimate infinitesimal and they have content, but the dimensionless point has no real content, because what is contained has got to be dimensionality. So the ultimate infinitesimal and ultimate articulated infinitude both have content. Dimensionless points do not, because it is dimensions which are my finger way too heavily there. So, because it is dimensions which are contained. Oh no, not again. Michael, calling upon you. To get me back to where I was. If you're there. File Explorer. Let's see where we are. This is another one of those moments. I should know how to do this, but I don't quite. So, that's what happens when you drop something. Okay, wishing you were here. Or Frederick, do you know if, well, maybe you're not in a position to come on, so. I'm sorry for this delay, and well, there must be a way. Michael, come back. If you can.
Yeah, what's going on?
I'm lost again. The same thing that happened before. Get me
Okay.
back to my... yeah, that's it. Okay. I don't know how you did that, but you did it.
Yep.
I'll have to learn how
Sorry
that
for
is
the
done.
delay.
I just lose it. So, because it is dimensions which are contents. Okay, and if you have a dimensionless point, you don't have the content. So let's see if I can, if I'm in the right place. Yes, I apparently am. Yeah, that could happen as my second keyboard tends to fall off. Okay, I'm sorry for that few-minute delay. And I just need to know how to get back there, because it just doesn't seem to work for me. But you get it instantly, so okay. So, okay, here is the point. Their points are non-dimensional. the ultimate infinitesimal and the ultimate articulated absolute infinitude are filled with content, with dimensionality. So I'm coming a little closer to defining the difference. And hopefully I wouldn't blame you if you ran away from this kind of speculation. But we have plenty to keep us busy. And let's see, where was I? Yes. So another question. Does an ultimate infinitesimal ever become void of dimensionality? Can anything become so small that it becomes everything? Well, that's a peculiar question, I will admit. But let's just take a look at this. Does an ultimate infinitesimal ever become void of dimensionality? And I will say my answer only once. Now, what do I mean by that? That's a peculiar statement, meaning that you have these boundless contents, which, and the contents are dimensions. So basically, this happens when dimensions disappear. The absolute infinitude contains all possible dimensions. The absolute infinitesimal contains all possible micro dimensions. Is there ever a time when dimensions disappear? And I will say that in terms of the great breath and in terms of the illusion of time, cyclically, yes, everything disappears. Everything. But the no thing does not disappear forever. The no thing remains ever as it was, forever. Forever. Without beginning, without end. And you might say, well, what have I to do with that? What have I, here we are suffering from a case of mistaken identity. What have I to do with the disappearance of everything and the revealed perpetuity of the no thing? And I will just have to say, you have everything to do with it. Because, and now I'll say it, and maybe you'll agree with me or not, you are the no thing. And really, ultimately, you are nothing else than the no thing, which beginninglessly and endlessly, perpetually forever, is exactly what it is forever. Now, that's such an abstract thought, but the good of it is that when you ponder things like that, it kind of breaks up your mind a bit. Now, a lot of us are just building our minds. I am one of those, and probably you are too. We're building our minds for work within the universe. But every once in a while, it doesn't hurt to be reminded of what we actually are. The no thing. I don't say nothing. I say the no thing. And when that is contemplated and the mind is shaken up a bit, then peculiar impressions begin to dawn, and the reality of oneness falls in upon us. In German, you have the word for intuition is Einfall, a fall in. It falls in. And we may be very surprised by the oneness that falls in when we allow this kind of uh, different work to occur. So I've said before, all infinitesimals, are they all absolute or ultimate? I say yes. But it doesn't mean that they are occurring within the absolute as somethings. I mean, an infinitesimal is a identifiable process. An absolute infinitude is an identifiable process. And those processes are not occurring within the pure absoluteness. That's what I want to say. Now, questions? Can an absolute infinitesimal ever become zero? Well, not the conventional zero, I would say, and thus share zero dimensionality, whether spatial or temporal dimensionality, with the true point. I say no. The true point is always non-dimensional, and until the final wipeout, it's like pralaya, isn't it? Until the final wipeout, there are worlds and worlds within the absolute infinitesimal and absolute um, articulated huge ultimate infinitude. So I think I have tried to define that, but obviously more work is needed. Now, why do I bother with any of this? Well, to a certain extent, maybe it's reading a bit too much Shankara when I was younger, but I have the overwhelming aspiration to live in a realized oneness, regardless of what else is going on. Maybe you do too. And that realized oneness would, or the quest for it, would drive me into speculations of this nature. Sometimes thoughts come to me, I can barely follow them. And so I know it's a bit of a demand if I ask you to try to follow them when, in fact, you did not derive them. So I know I'm being maybe too demanding here in this kind of course, especially since when I drop my keyboard, I can't even get back to the text. That gives you an idea of my computer technical expertise. So I want to show and to experience or inperience that there is no separation of anything from anything else, regardless of appearances. Master DK tells us the great heresy, which I suppose means wrong thought, is the great heresy of separateness. It seems to be at the root of so many of our problems and takes us right out of an advanced stage of the Garden of Eden. Now, if you're quite satisfied to live outside the Garden of Eden, symbolically speaking, okay, you don't have to put your mind on the rack in this way and break it down until just beyond what seems normal, something other, which is amazing, begins to appear. You don't have to do that. For myself, for the time being, I live a dual life. I have to study everything that DK writes in the mode of classical spiritual occultism, and I have to get rid of the limitations which prevent me from experiencing oneness. It's a dual requirement, and maybe that is true for you. Now, can there be a true infinitesimal Um, and I'll go further, which is always an absolute infinitesimal, actually within any universe. Oh, I say no, because no universe is, being a finite projection of absolute infinity, can support an actual item which is infinite. There can be implications that infinitudes exist, but you cannot demonstrate what's a completed infinity? Okay. You cannot demonstrate a completed infinitesimalizing or a completed, I don't know what to call it, infinitizing, maybe, in a normal finite universe. I think it really has to be understood that we do live in a finite universe. And the reason it is finite is that the self-perception of the universal logos is bounded and not boundless. Now that's quite a reason. Think of it for a minute. The perception, the self-perception of the universal logos is bounded and produces a Maha Maya that we call a universe. And there's no way out of that we can demonstrate an actualized infinitude of any kind. We can demonstrate the implication that somewhere, somehow, such an infinitude exists. May we say that there are, and that's what I've been saying, implied infinitesimals and implied infinitudes. But that is not the same as an absolute, an actual infinitesimal within any universe. I don't know, I have this word here, but the Tibetan, the Buddha was always looking for the state of suchness. He was filled with suchness, which automatically tells you it can't really be defined. But eventually we are looking for something that is even more remarkable and beyond the pale, and we can call it none-suchness or absoluteness. So in universe, there is the implication of the existence of infinitesimals. And I should have said that as well. I should have said, yeah, and here it is. Oh my, this gets a little bit complicated, but I do want to say the same thing basically about infinitudes. I want to say, may we say that and I'm going to kind of enlarge upon this. Let's see if I I want to copy this in the hopes that it will copy. May we say that there are implied infinitudes, implied, but not within within any universe, but that implied infinitudes are not the same as actual infinitudes within any universe. That's the same thing, only from another angle. And maybe we can. There is nothing absolutely infinite in any finite universe. Only the implication that such a state of infinitude somewhere, somehow exists, and it will be found in the supra-universal realm beyond the perception of the any universal logos. Beyond that perception, the universal logos is busy dealing with his own limited self-perceptions. But beyond that come the real infinitesimals and the real infinitudes above and beyond any universal Mahamayavic, which means great illusion, beyond any Mahamayavic finite demonstration. Well, I'll tell you what, friends, we seem to be, I've got quite a bit here. And the only thing that I can think of doing, which is responsible, would be to take this up again. As you see, it goes on a bit, and there's no way that this kind of thought can be completed in the timing that we have remaining to us if we're going to at least bend our minds, our abstract minds, in this direction to try to fathom even a little bit of what it means to live impressed by higher points of tension. Right now, frankly, we may live the quite ordinary life of an aspiring student of esotericism and meditator and server. Okay. We may be doing that. And we must continue doing that. But there are other dimensions. There is non-dimensionality, and there is infinite dimensionality in the pralaic, supra-universal state to which you and I, in our real identity, have forever returned, forever, beginninglessly, endlessly. And bringing those two perspectives together of being a good student, a deep meditator, and a committed server, bringing those three together with these abstract thoughts, provided in part, I think, by the influence of the angel of the presence and beyond, is a task. It's a real task to bring those things together. And oftentimes I forget to do it. I just go through my life as someone who is trying to really learn the Tibetan occultism, spiritual occultism, and sometimes succeed and sometimes fail, and okay. But every once in a while, I remember being in Ireland once. I've always had an affinity for that country, somehow. And my daughter and her family her husband is Irish, and they were traveling and for a little while and reliving some poetry that they had been reading in a normal sort of way. And then they went to the places where the poetry was conceived. And and that was a real reliving, a real experience for them, not just the fact that they're reading a good poem, but they're in the place where the poem was conceived. The experience was very different. And one day I was kind of in the living room, such as it was. Tui and I were only there for a very few days, maybe 3 or something like that, very few. And I took a look at my daughter, and suddenly something opened up, and I could, heart opening or a stillness or a being experience that I can always call upon when I want to know what is being, because I can generalize from that particular moment to other moments in which I want being to demonstrate. So maybe all of us have those particular images or moments when the door opens, and we can use them to transfer the same opening to other situations, other people, other groups, and whatnot. An impression came, and I'm perfectly willing to be surprised by such impressions unexpectedly, because I think that was an unexpected impression. I can generate it right now if I think of it. It goes beyond quality and quantity. And lying beyond, behind, within, beneath, whatever, quality and quantity is beingness. And I can, if I'm having a good day, transfer that. I can transfer that to whomever, whatever. And that is a great common denominator, which in a way I'm forcing all things to demonstrate before my eyes, or ears, or taste or smell, or whatever. And that is one of the ways that works for me to get into the realization of the oneness, which I would not like to have remain strictly a mystical realization. I want it to be really useful in helping to elevate others and in dialoguing, as it were, with these sources of oneness upon Jacob's ladder of ascending points of tension. Interesting about Jacob, he symbolically, but he was always wrestling with the angel. And the ladder was involved in this wrestling. There is a ladder to be climbed. And Master Hilarion, he says, better not put a muddy foot on the electric ladder, because you'll be caught like a bird. You won't be able to escape, because electricity and mud don't go well together. Okay, well, except for a couple of deviations where the computer wanted to fall off my lap, we have covered some interesting things. Now, what I want to, I'm going to stick with this, next time we get together, there's more. So I want to write in red, and does anybody know when we meet again, like the three witches in Macbeth? When do we meet again?
December 16th.
16th, okay. Okay. So let's see here. and I'll put it in red, so that there's not much chance of forgetting it. Just take me a second here. Technical stuff slows me down. Returning, December 16th, 2021, for further amplification. And hopefully not getting into further trouble. There it is. And there it will be. Okay. Now there is more left in what I want to suggest. But I can't help but think that some of the main points I'm trying to get across in this rather arcane type of presentation are, some of them, sinking into our consciousness. I judge that can be the case, and is the case. I hope so. Let's just pause for a moment. And do a little bit of oneness skimming, or being skimming, beyond the realm of quantity or quality. It all gets crunched together until what remains is in fact the reflection, at least, of the oneness that forever is and will be. It's hard to think of forever. It just doesn't stop, and it never began. And you say, well, how can there be something that never begins? Well, only in the realm of form must there be an initial cause. But in the realm of formlessness, to which we are making application, we really could be overtaken by that extraordinary sense of beginningless, endless foreverness. I remember in the arcane school, I had a friend. He was head of the triangles desk. His name was Martin. And he and I used to, once a week or once every 2 weeks, visit a Canadian man who was quite a thinker. His name was Al. Of course, he'd have to be over 100 years old now to be still alive and in the usual sense. And he says the infinity circuit is strange. There's something about consciousness that just doesn't want to take it in. It's almost like it snaps and you can't get a hold of it. It just turns off your usual consciousness. I think he was right. I think he was right. He taught us a lot of things about video. He was a video man, and we were developing the Lucis Trust video programs at that time, 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago. And he was our technical advisor, but at the same time also our teacher in some respects about what consciousness would hold and what it wouldn't hold. And if sometimes you feel that snap, I just can't deal with this. This makes no sense. Well, it doesn't make sense in the usual sense, that's for sure. It's to be expected, because that's the way we are wired, at least at the present time. When I try to give you this stuff, I feel like I'm off on a great adventure. I don't know where it will lead. And I know you don't know where it will lead either. But it seems worthy of a try, at least, because I do have faith that we will continue our normal studies, meditation and service, which are so important. Okay. Now maybe some of you have actually lasted during this rather lengthy program. So do we have, Michael, maybe you can let me know if there's any questions or anybody that might like to speak.
Nothing right now.
Yeah, it's a total wipeout, huh? My success, right? Nothing here.
They're in that other state of consciousness,
Oh, is that it? Come to join me in that other state of consciousness. You're very brave, though, you who are attending. I have a friend who knows something about the teaching, and he said to me quite confidently, no one is ever going to know what you're talking about. Well, I don't know if I considered that particularly encouraging remark, but I did realize that once a week or once every 2 weeks, I would be talking about things that were arcane, remote, and unexpected, and based upon many neologisms, which means the creation of new words, to embody experiences which are not generally shared. The whole goal is simple. The method to it that I've tried to take us through is not simple. But a sense of the one can descend. Now, maybe it's not the same oneness that a solar logos would experience, or logoi beyond and beyond, and so forth. We have to give them credit for having a bit more consciousness than the average, as DK calls it, microscopic man. Think of that for a minute. Here we are, microscopic man, confronting the vastness, only to discover that what we had called the vastness is itself finite. So even in our little solar system, we're said to be halfway through, and how long will a solar system last, or also the higher aspects of the incarnation of a solar logos? Well, it could be from some Hindu chronology, some reckonings by them, another 150 trillion years, Earth years. And then you have to have a kind of period in between, which is similar in duration. Let's put it like this. As personalities, we feel the time is short. We have to hurry up, accomplish this or that before we die, whatever. So we don't fail, all that. But time is the one thing that forever we have plenty of. More time than we know what to do with. How much time is forever, beginninglessly and endlessly? How much time is that? Can you even really measure it in terms of time? You can only measure definite periods, which, because they beginninglessly and endlessly have gone on and will go on, have to be considered an infinite sequence. Now, basically what I'm trying to do, friends, sometimes it actually dawns on me what I'm trying to do, is tune up your abstract mind so you learn how to think in concepts that are related to the intuition of the Buddhic plane and to the still higher realizations of the atmic plane, and eventually more. I don't know how many of you or I think that we are pretty good abstract thinkers. I've begun to think I am not. And then I, try to see what's missing and try to develop that ability. So look, if there is nothing else, and it is still so, Michael, there is nothing else. No hands raised, no nothing.
No hands, no comments.
Okay, but still, there are bodies present and minds present. So that's good. Does all this go over your head? It goes over mine. And I keep working at it to try to make it more and more experiential to myself, more and more real. That plunge into as much of the one as may become possible, to a tiny little emanation of like my first level of human identity, what I am as a human being. But more will come, more will come. So all of us on the communications team, we do want to thank you for persisting, many of you. And we know that your persistence and mine will bear fruit. We have that confidence. And so now Tuya and I will be continuing. I think tomorrow is a glamour, of which there's plenty to go around, and maybe a little easier to deal with, when dealing with ordinary esoteric subjects. And then we start to have things related to the new moon and to the EUN, Esoteric United Nations. We seem to come back to the what appears to be the practical world, even if it's an esoteric approach to the practical world. But let us not eschew or imagine that there is no practicality in this, because if the oneness that forever is can begin to be sensed, then a great advantage will come to us. A great advantage. And it will be a big surprise coming to us. So, tell you what, I'm just going to ask that Michael remain here with me a little bit to get me oriented on a few technical points, and wish you all, on behalf of the team and Tuya and myself, farewell for this particular evening, and tomorrow our very practical readings and meditation the glamour that has so many people in thrall. In thrall, it means in prison. If you say to someone, "Oh, you look enthralling," it usually means you look wonderful, but it means really you look imprisoning. That's what it finally ends up meaning. So I'll stay on, and you can go forth with our blessings and lots of love and hope for um, your wise assimilation of whatever can come through to you. Okay. So blessings, everybody, and love. And I'll just wait here with Michael. And thank you, of course, for your thank yous. Okay.